Good evening, friends. Here's a brief technical debrief in a special episode about the Sumara story. So, as mentioned a few days ago, there's really no surprise. It imploded due to the forces it was under. That means it was undersized compared to the pressures at the depth where the Titanic is located. So we're talking about the 3,800 meter zone here, so enormous pressures. Unfortunately, even if the submarine has visited the site 2 or 3 times, as some mentioned, that's not proof. If it's under-designed, well, every time it goes there, it's at the limit, it's at the edge of its resistance. It's going to be put under a lot of strain and then weakened. And every time it comes back, the risks of it imploding are multiplied. And then, of course, after 2 or 3 dives, it was over. It imploded. The United States Coast Guard Rear Admiral confirmed the pressure vessel imploded. He didn't mention the submarine or the vessel. This man is highly experienced. He's a Rear Admiral with 32 years in the Coast Guard. He mentioned the pressure vessel. So I don't know if the photos from the site will ever come out. Maybe they will. But I would like to draw your attention to the 2 possible modes of destruction. And when the photos are available, we'll know which mode was responsible for this destruction. Let me explain. Always. The submarine is made of 2 thick layers, if you will. The first is a metal tube. There's a metal tube in which the occupants are. This metal tube alone is not made to withstand the pressure at those depths. So it is wrapped, coated with a layer of carbon fiber, with, as some have pointed out, resin. Previously, I didn't assume the carbon fibers were floating like that, but they're always embedded in a resin matrix. So this resin, which is reinforced by the fibers, is supposed to, according to the design, which, as we can see, is not up to the level of the forces or the challenges. Well, it's supposed to provide rigidity and protect our vessel from pressure. Let's say that's the result, that's the resultant, that's our layers of carbon fiber. So normally it goes into contact. Excuse me, I don't have, everything I have is in the car right now. So there you go, it normally goes into contact, it touches. All right. Now, there are 2 options. The first thing is, it's the whole submarine, or the bathyscaphe, or the submersible, which is completely crushed. So, like this. If the photos come out, you'll see, for example, if it's this way, you'll see that the whole object is crushed, flattened at the bottom of the water. There's another option. And maybe that's what Rear Admiral John Mauger is referring to. It's this one. It's that the outside seems intact. The outside of the submarine or the bathyscaphe looks perfect. Yet the pressure chamber is already crushed and destroyed. How did that happen? Like this. If you look, the idea I'm sharing with you is that in water, pressure is transmitted through columns of water. So that means this, simply put, this is it. This is my thickness of carbon fibers. Okay, resin carbon fibers. It's 127 millimeters, just so you know, 127 millimeters. They say it can reach 4,000 meters. That means, literally, we're talking about 31 meters of resistance per millimeter of carbon fiber. That seems good to me. I know it's not linear. All right, I know it's not linear, but it just seems a little bit light to me. That means for 100 meters of depth, we would have used roughly 3 millimeters of thickness. That's a bit short, we don't know. So let's continue. What I'm trying to say with the dove is that it's this. Let's imagine that in the carbon fiber at some point we are. A crack that allowed water to find a way through. We have a crack that allowed water to find a way through. It could be a crack as thin as a hair, okay, as thick as a hair. It doesn't need to be the mega crack. We have our metal shell, the pressure chamber, which is here, which is in black. And here, that's the ocean. For example, we have 400 bars. Let's imagine we're at 4,000 meters. Okay, that's about, we have 400 kilos per square centimeter. Okay, up to this point, the water that manages to seep in here, if we assume there's a continuous water column, this water column might be the equivalent of a teaspoon, maybe the equivalent of a cup, but it forms a continuity. So if it forms a continuity in a microcrack, that means the 400 bars that are here are carried and transmitted entirely to the interface. Between the pressure chamber, and it's the resin and carbon fiber that protects it. That means that between the two, between this vessel and its protection, the 400 bars will come in. The pressure has nothing to do with the amount of water. A very small amount of water can transfer a huge pressure. So, in this case, what happens? In this case, what we're going to have is this. We're going to have a batch coming in, starting to press on the pressure vessel. And then what happens is that it will finish quite quickly. By deforming it, and the more it deforms, the more water will get in and it will eventually crush it completely. So how fast does this happen? It can happen in maybe 1,000th of a second, or it can happen in 30 seconds. It depends. It depends on the crack in question, but it ends up crushing it. It's like crushing a can. You can crush it quickly, but you can also crush it slowly. It all depends on the flow that's coming in at 400 bar. Note, by the way, that the resin this time is going to work against him. It's simply doing its job, but it's not going to deform because it's receiving pressure from both sides. Because if you look here inside, if I go back to the drawing just to show you, if I look, this is my carbon fiber and this is my vessel. With people inside, okay, here I have 1 bar, I have atmospheric pressure, but out there I have 400 bar. At the interface between the two, I have 400 now because the water is coming in. You can see that the resin is getting 400 bar from both sides, so it won't deform, it won't move. The one that actually gets a huge pressure differential is the metal vessel that's there. It gets 400 bar on one side, it has 1 bar on the other side, so you see the pressure differential will actually deform it and crush it. And so, after a while, there are the ends that are like this that will pop off, okay? And that's going to make us an implosion, okay? Which can be explosive enough to kill people instantly. So, let me show you if I take my system again. So, the first mode I'm describing is that the whole object is crushed. So everything is crushed at the same time. When the photos come out, if you see that everything is flattened, it means it's this mode. Alternatively, there's the more complex mode I just mentioned, where water manages to seep in between the carbon protection and the pressure chamber, as Vice-Amiral called it. And in that case, you have something like this. The outside stays intact and the inside is crushed. All right. So if I take it out now, you see that the inside is crushed while the outside is intact. All right. So if I assume this gentleman with 32 years of experience uses precise language for this profession, when we say pressure chamber in a submarine, we're not referring to the entire submarine. We're only referring to the chamber, the part that is occupied. So there you go. So potentially that's what he's describing. The problem with carbon fiber construction, the way he's doing it, is that it's very difficult to inspect, among other things. That is to say, there's the carbon, there's the tube, the carbon fibers are glued on, and then wrapped. So in the end, it's hidden, this interface. If water gets in, or if there are problems or cracks, we won't be able to see them, because we can't take everything apart after each dive. So at that point, we can't see what's happening. And then potentially one day we're heading towards a catastrophic explosion. It could have happened on this dive, or the next one, or the one after that. In 2018, a guy reported this problem to them. With your construction, I think in terms of safety, it's not very good. And there's a problem, which is the interface carbon fiber metal vessel. He said, I'm not convinced that you can check the integrity of the vessel after each dive, given how it's built. When he said that, he was fired and they filed a complaint against him. They sent lawyers, you know, the American lawyers who send letters like, if they back down, who are there precisely to intimidate former employees and tell them to keep quiet. And then the case went to court, and after that, they paid him off out of court just to make the whole thing stop there. So there was a bad safety culture in that company. When you look at this box, and I saw them working a little bit through some videos. There are two of them on the internet. They are very ingenious people. They are intelligent people. They are people who, technically speaking, are very good. All right. Very motivated, really. These are people I like. These are people we truly appreciate. Very inventive. All right. So that's good. They clearly lack a safety culture. Regarding safety, they only have one culture. While reviewing their final 2022 mission, at several moments I found myself hiding my face because it was so horrifying what appeared on the screen. In fact, for example, this story where they used a game controller, it's a clue, even if the game controller didn't play a direct role in the accident. It's still revealing. It's revealing of a culture. That is to say, if the game controller was there to control, a golden camera can say, well, it's not a big deal. It's not the end of the world. If the game controller doesn't work, the golden camera won't either, so we won't get any image. That's it. Except that they use it to control the building cafe or the ship. That's something else. There's just a lack of culture. For example, take this iPhone. Just a phone that works very well. If I have an app on it that I use to control a drone, that's perfect. But if the app crashes or the iPhone overheats and stops, it's not the end of the world. I'll just lose the drone. But we can't imagine, even if it's never broken down, we can't imagine that this could have an app that lets you fly an Airbus or a Boeing, for example. That's impossible for many people. It would be madness. Yet, it's the same reliability, but the risk, what's at stake, is huge. We're talking about human lives. But those people, at no point did I feel that they understood or measured the value of human lives and what that implies on a technical level. So that's a culture that didn't seem to have that at all. If this submarine had been unmanned, it would have been ingenious. It would have been magnificent if it was some kind of underwater drone. Like, you pilot it from the surface, you go to the Titanic and elsewhere, you take photos, videos, and you come back. That would have been great, but when you lose it, that's it. Too bad. We made a measurement mistake. I don't know what went wrong. Well, it's not a big deal. It's not the end of the world. We'll build another one. But when we're transporting humans, the bar, the technical bar, is going to rise sharply. And those people didn't have to measure exactly this. So they used some odds and ends, objects bought on Amazon, pipes taken from construction sites, all that to make a do-it-yourself project, which is fine for drones, but not for transporting humans. Here you go. This story fascinated many because Al-Titi reflects traits found in all of us. The side already, the claustrophobic side, there's a notion of claustrophobia in there. Finding yourself bolted inside this steel tube. Personally, I would refuse to be bolted inside that tube, even to go to the deepest part of a swimming pool. When I see people getting paid to go in there, while I would refuse payment to go in, it's true that it's quite, a lot of people actually think that way, and it's pretty strange. Besides, these are so-called famous people. They're rich people who have run companies we rely on to make decisions and to see their decision-making ability wiped out to the point where they agree to go. In such a dangerous object, it raises questions. But actually, it's all about the packaging. It's all about the marketing. Look, I'll give you a bank account number, right? I give you a bank account number and you send me 250,000 euros for the following privilege. I'll put you in a metal barrel and then I'll throw you in the middle of the ocean and then you end up at the bottom. Eventually, you'll notice it has an automatic system to bring you back up. And there's no one who will accept this order. Clearly, no one will accept it. There's no one who's going to write to me saying, yes, I'm ready to pay. No, that's not going to happen. However, it's a matter of presentation. But the problem today is that we've lost our sense of the land. We've lost our sense of reality. As a society, we have layers of presentation, many layers of abstraction, or topics about things that make no sense. But since we live in cities, we work in glass towers, we're disconnected from reality. And we forget, among other things, that our safety is our responsibility. It's not the responsibility of an official or the state or a company. We must judge for ourselves using the facts. Thank you for continuing in this direction. Thank you. What's striking here, see, is a kind of legitimization of people who, once they're properly dressed up, are approved by everyone. And it ends up causing death, even though from the start it never should have. Arrived in the story I'm telling you, I told you, give me 250,000 euros and all that. Nobody's going to give them to me. Why? Because I don't have the marketing. Look, I'm telling you, I throw you into the middle of the ocean in a barrel. That's not a good selling point. But if I told you I throw you over the Titanic, you could see. You see now, that's a bit more glamorous. It will be a submarine, I'm not going to tell you, a metal barrel in which you're bolted in. You're going to go in a submarine. State of the art, an extremely safe object developed with the best minds we have today on our board. We have people from National Aeronautics and Space Administration. We have a website. We have a logo engraved on our clothes. We have a huge logistics system. You see that now. We're moving away from the narrative, from the barrel we throw into the ocean. But in reality, that's exactly what we're doing. It's really just a barrel we're tossing into the ocean. But look, when we change the narrative on top of it, we're basically koshering pork. That means that suddenly this unacceptable situation starts to resonate with more and more people. And if I keep going in this direction, well, I might eventually have people writing to me saying, listen, your story about the barrel, I'm interested in that. I'd like to make a deposit already to reserve my spot. All right, there you go, my friends. That's how it is. I just hope it went by very quickly, because once the hull starts to deform, you can have an implosion, an explosive implosion. That means the cabin, its volume suddenly shrinks, the air inside gets compressed, the air goes from 1 atmosphere to 350 to where they were, 380. Its temperature will suddenly rise, there's a sudden increase in energy, people won't die from drowning. They don't just end up swimming at 3,800 meters. It's more like this. It's more like a shock wave, an energy wave that might be equivalent to a high-speed train rushing through this place at full speed. And so that's what's going to cause a shock and instant death. The only thing we can't say, that we can't know and will probably never know, is how quickly the phenomenon started. They were looking out the porthole for the Titanic, and in an instant they were dead. It's over. It's finished. It happened. We don't even have time to... In a thousandth of a second, it's done. No one saw anything. No one felt anything. Or did they have 30 seconds or a minute where they heard noises, felt vibrations, saw the hull deforming? Then suddenly there's an acceleration, like phenomena with exponential growth. At first, it's just a noise, a whistling sound, a sheet of metal starting to deform. There, it increases, it increases, it increases. The next moment, it's over. I don't really know what the scenario is. When the images are released, if ever, check the condition of the carbon hull. Is the carbon hull crushed or intact? If it seems intact, it means water seeped underneath. If it was crushed, it just couldn't withstand it. But I lean toward the idea that water got in between the pressure vessel and the carbon hull. There you go, my friends. Thank you for listening to this video about the story of the Titan from Oceangate, which was crushed while visiting the Titanic. And we can't help but draw a parallel between the two stories. Between the Titanic, which was unsinkable, the ship, the vessel that was never supposed to sink or could never sink. And then at the same time, we see this bathyscaphe, which also was not supposed to sink. Then it sank in the same spot, adding 5 more deaths to the 1912 catastrophe. Personally, I think the place is bad. You just shouldn't go there, that's all. It's not scientific, but thank you, my friends. See you in the next video. See you in the next video.